INFJs are known as the rarest personality type, gentle, compassionate, and deeply loyal. But here's the paradox. When an INFJ walks away, they don't argue, they don't warn, and they don't come back. Their silent exit feels like a mystery, but it's not random. It's calculated, emotional, and final. In this video, we're uncovering why INFJs disappear without a word and why they never look back once the decision is made. You'll discover the hidden psychology behind their sudden detachment, the unspoken signs you missed before they walked away, and the deeper truth about their loyalty and their limits. Stick with me until the very end because the final reason will reveal the one truth most people don't realize about INFJs, and it's the reason losing them hurts forever. Silent observers before action, INFJs notice patterns long before they walk away. INFJs rarely act impulsively when it comes to relationships, friendships, or even work connections. On the surface, it may look like they suddenly cut someone off without warning, but in truth, their decision to walk away is usually the result of a long and silent observation process. They are natural pattern recognizers. This means they don't just pay attention to what you say, they pay attention to how often your words line up with your actions, how your tone shifts in different situations, and how consistent your energy feels over time. While others might dismiss small red flags, INFJs quietly store them in the back of their mind. Maybe it's a subtle lie, a dismissive tone, or a repeated lack of respect for boundaries. To most people, these things may seem insignificant, but to an INFJ, they add up quickly. Their intuition connects the dots that others miss, and once a pattern emerges, they can see exactly where the relationship is headed long before anyone else realizes. What makes INFJs unique is that they won't always confront you immediately. Instead, they often retreat into silence, choosing to observe whether the behavior continues or if it was just a one-time slip. This patience can give the impression that they're forgiving or unaffected, but the truth is they're simply gathering enough clarity to know whether the situation is fixable or not. By the time they actually decide to walk away, the INFJ has already replayed the situation in their mind countless times. They've analyzed your behavior, weighed their loyalty against the pain it's causing them, and come to the conclusion that staying would only drain them further. When they finally leave, it may shock you because they didn't broadcast their doubts beforehand, but that doesn't mean the decision was sudden. It was calculated, deliberate, and final. And this is what unsettles people most about INFJs. You never really know when they've already made up their mind. They may still be smiling, still listening, still giving, but deep inside, the exit strategy is already in motion. That's why, when they walk away, they don't look back, because they've already been preparing for that moment in silence. The buildup of silent resentment, small betrayals accumulate quietly. One of the most misunderstood aspects of INFJs is how they process resentment. Unlike some personality types who express frustration immediately, INFJs rarely lash out in the moment. Instead, they internalize. They take note of the small betrayals, the broken promises, the dismissive comments, the subtle manipulations, or the times when they were there for others but didn't receive the same support in return. Each instance alone might not seem like much, but for an INFJ, these moments stack up like silent bricks in a wall between them and the other person. What makes this resentment dangerous is that it doesn't always show outwardly. INFJs are masters of maintaining composure even when they feel hurt or unappreciated. They may continue smiling, listening, and offering empathy on the surface, while inside they are quietly tallying the imbalances in the relationship. To outsiders, everything looks fine, but beneath the calm exterior, frustration and disappointment are building pressure. This accumulation often happens over months or even years. INFJs are naturally patient and forgiving, so they tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. But every time someone dismisses their feelings, takes advantage of their kindness, or fails to respect their boundaries, another layer of quiet resentment forms. Eventually, it reaches a tipping point, and when it does, the INFJ doesn't usually explode with anger. Instead, they withdraw. The withdrawal is what shocks people. Those who assumed the INFJ would always be available suddenly find them distant, detached, and unresponsive. By then, it's often too late to repair the damage because the resentment has hardened into a decision. The INFJ no longer sees value in staying, and unlike temporary frustration, their quiet resentment transforms into finality. This is why people often describe INFJs as walking away without warning. The truth is, the warning signs were always there, hidden in the subtle silences, the fading enthusiasm, and the quiet emotional distance. But because INFJs rarely vocalize their pain until it's unbearable, those around them never realize how much resentment has been quietly growing in the background. Their deep loyalty has limits. Once the line is crossed, there's no return. One of the defining traits of INFJs is their fierce loyalty. When they choose to let someone into their inner world, whether it's a friend, partner, or even a colleague, they commit with their whole heart. They give their time, their energy, and their empathy in ways that often go far beyond what most people expect. To the INFJ, loyalty isn't just about showing up. It's about standing by someone's side through struggles, sacrifices, and silent battles that others might not even notice. But here's the hidden truth. This loyalty, as deep as it isn't infinite. INFJs may forgive small mistakes, overlook flaws, and extend patience far longer than most would. Yet, they have a very clear, though often invisible, boundary. Once someone betrays their trust, disrespects their values, or repeatedly takes advantage of their kindness, the INFJ's inner switch flips. The same loyalty that once felt unshakable suddenly vanishes. What shocks people is how final this change feels. To outsiders, it seems like the INFJ walked away out of nowhere, but in reality, the decision came after countless chances and silent warnings. Once they decide that a line has been crossed, whether through betrayal, manipulation, or emotional neglect, they don't look back. Their detachment is absolute. This limit exists because INFJs know the weight of their loyalty. They understand how rare and precious it is, and they refuse to waste it on people who have proven unworthy. Unlike other personalities who may give endless second chances, INFJs protect their energy with fierce resolve once the bond is broken. Their loyalty is all or nothing, and once it turns into nothing, there's no path back. For the person left behind, the sudden absence of that loyalty feels like a devastating loss. They realize too late that the INFJ's commitment wasn't something to take lightly. And the cruel irony is that by the time they understand its value, the INFJ has already closed the door for good. Withdrawal over confrontation. They'd rather disappear than fight endlessly. When most people feel hurt, betrayed, or misunderstood, their instinct is to fight it out, to argue, defend themselves, or demand closure. But INFJs rarely choose that path. Instead of pouring energy into endless conflict, they take a different route. They withdraw. To an INFJ, silence and distance often feel more powerful, more dignified, and more healing than raising their voice ever could. This withdrawal isn't weakness, it's strategy. INFJs know that arguments often spiral into noise, where truth gets lost, emotions escalate, and no real resolution emerges. They see how confrontation can drain them without bringing peace, so rather than stay entangled in cycles of blame and justification, they quietly step back. The very act of disappearing, emotionally first, and sometimes physically, is their way of reclaiming control over the situation. What makes this so unsettling to others is the suddenness. One day, the INFJ might still be present, offering empathy and patience. The next, it's as if a switch has flipped. They go quiet, withdraw their energy, and stop engaging altogether. For the person on the other side, this feels like being cut off mid-sentence, left with questions and no answers. But from the INFJ's perspective, the decision wasn't sudden at all. It was the result of long observation, silent reflection, and the gradual weighing of whether the relationship was still worth their emotional investment. The irony is that withdrawal often speaks louder than words. By not engaging, INFJs send a message that cannot be twisted or argued with. Their absence forces the other person to sit with the silence, to reflect on what went wrong, and sometimes to face truths they would have ignored if the INFJ had stayed to fight. This behavior is one of the reasons people feel haunted after an INFJ walks away. Confrontation ends with words exchanged. Withdrawal ends with silence that lingers. And for INFJs, that silence isn't about revenge. It's about choosing peace over chaos and protecting their soul from battles that were never worth fighting in the first place. Protecting their energy at all costs. Walking away is survival, not cruelty. For INFJs, energy isn't just about physical stamina. It's emotional, mental, and spiritual. They absorb the moods of others, feel emotions deeply, and carry more than most people realize. Because of this, their energy is precious. And when that energy is constantly drained by conflict, manipulation, or emotional imbalance, INFJs know they must make a difficult choice, protect themselves, even if it means walking away. This decision is often misunderstood. To outsiders, it may look cold, selfish, or even cruel. After all, INFJs are known for their compassion, patience, and willingness to help. But what most don't see is the cost of that compassion. Constantly giving without receiving, constantly forgiving without true change, eventually empties them. Once they hit that breaking point, the INFJ realizes that self-preservation isn't optional, it's survival. Walking away becomes the only way to reclaim balance and restore peace within themselves. The power of this withdrawal lies in its finality. When an INFJ protects their energy, they don't do it halfway. They don't leave breadcrumbs, they don't play games, and they don't circle back to toxic dynamics. Instead, they quietly close the door, often without explanation. This leaves others stunned because they're used to the INFJ being endlessly giving and patient. But that very shock underscores the truth. The INFJ's departure wasn't sudden, it was a long time coming. What's important to understand is that this withdrawal isn't rooted in anger or vengeance. It's not about punishing the other person. It's about choosing themselves for once. For the INFJ, walking away is the ultimate boundary. It says, I won't sacrifice my well-being just to keep a connection alive. And in that choice, they rediscover their strength. In fact, protecting their energy is what allows INFJs to thrive. Once they've stepped away from toxic people or draining environments, they heal quickly, their intuition sharpens, their creativity flourishes, and their compassion returns. But this time, directed at people who truly deserve it. To those left behind, the silence of an INFJ may feel like abandonment. But to the INFJ, it's not cruelty, it's an act of survival, a way of saving themselves before they have nothing left to give. And once that decision is made, there's rarely a second chance. Closure isn't for them, it's for you. One of the most misunderstood traits of INFJs is their refusal to provide closure when they walk away. To most people, closure means an explanation, a final conversation, or at least a clear ending to tie up loose ends. But for INFJs, closure isn't necessary. Not for them. By the time they decide to cut ties, they've already processed everything internally. They've replayed the conversations, analyzed the patterns, felt the disappointment, and made peace with the reality of the relationship. The act of leaving isn't a reaction, it's the result of a long, silent process of letting go. That's why INFJs often don't explain themselves when they walk away. They don't need to. For them, the decision is final and words won't change it. Explaining would mean reopening wounds they've already closed internally. It would also risk being pulled back into the same cycles of manipulation, guilt, or emotional games they worked so hard to escape. So instead of giving explanations, they choose silence, because silence is their closure. To the person left behind, this feels brutal. The lack of explanation can be maddening. It forces them to sit with their own actions, their own choices, and the reality of the INFJ's absence. Many try to chase closure, asking why, demanding answers, or pushing for one last conversation. But what they don't realize is that closure is for their comfort, not the INFJ's. The INFJ doesn't need it because they've already detached. They've moved on emotionally long before the physical separation took place. This dynamic often shocks people. They're used to drama, to arguments, to long goodbyes that drag out the ending. But INFJs don't give that. Their quiet withdrawal delivers the harshest lesson. Sometimes you don't get to hear the explanation you think you deserve. Instead, you're left to face the silence, and in that silence, the truth of your actions becomes impossible to ignore. INFJs understand that not explaining themselves is more powerful than any words. It forces growth, reflection, and accountability in others, while allowing them to preserve their energy and peace. For them, walking away without closure isn't cruelty, it's the purest form of self-respect. Because walking away is transformation, their exit is also their rebirth. For INFJs, walking away isn't simply an ending, it's the beginning of transformation. When they decide to cut ties, it's rarely an impulsive act. It comes after months, sometimes years, of absorbing energy, giving too much, and holding on far longer than most people ever would. By the time they finally walk away, they are not just leaving behind a person, a situation, or a relationship, they are stepping into a new version of themselves. This transformation happens quietly. On the outside, it may look like the INFJ has vanished, withdrawn, or gone cold, but internally, a rebirth is underway. The energy that was once poured into fixing, helping, or enduring toxic dynamics is redirected inward. They begin to reclaim their power, to invest in themselves, and to rebuild the parts of their identity that were overshadowed by the demands of others. Walking away allows INFJs to shed the emotional weight they carried for too long. It's as if every step forward removes a layer of guilt, resentment, or obligation, and with each layer gone, they rediscover their true essence, creative, intuitive, and deeply resilient. They don't just heal from the hurt, they grow stronger because of it. What once felt like a painful loss turns into the soil where their strength, clarity, and purpose take root. For those left behind, this transformation is unsettling. They expect the INFJ to crumble, to come back for closure, or to seek reconciliation. But instead, they watch as the INFJ rises silently, becoming more self-assured and focused than ever. The absence that once felt like a punishment now becomes a haunting reminder. The INFJ did not just leave, they evolved. This rebirth is why INFJs rarely look back. They don't cling to what's behind them, because walking away has already changed them too deeply to return. They understand that transformation only happens when you stop feeding the same cycles that broke you. And so, each exit becomes a kind of quiet revolution, proof that their silence is not just an escape, but the beginning of their true freedom. Why they never look back? When INFJs close the door, it's locked permanently. For INFJs, walking away is never casual. They don't drift in and out of people's lives carelessly, nor do they sever connections without a long internal battle. By the time they finally decide to close the door, they've already endured more than most would tolerate. Betrayal, manipulation, neglect, or a repeated disregard for their boundaries. And when that door shuts, it's not just closed temporarily, it's locked, sealed, and guarded by a strength that surprises even those closest to them. The reason is simple. INFJs give everything before they take anything away. They are natural givers, often offering patience, forgiveness, and second chances long past the point most people would. But every gift of loyalty and empathy has a limit. When someone crosses that invisible threshold, the one that violates trust beyond repair, the INFJ's detachment is absolute. They don't look back because they know that reopening that door means reopening the wound. This decision often shocks people who misjudge the INFJ's kindness as weakness. They expect them to waver, to return, to seek closure or reconciliation. Instead, they discover the opposite. Once an INFJ decides a connection is toxic, there's no negotiation. There are no long explanations, no dramatic farewells, and no drawn-out second chances, just silence, permanent and impenetrable. What makes this so final is the INFJ's understanding of cycles. They see patterns others ignore. They know that allowing someone back in after they've proven untrustworthy only repeats the pain. So instead of indulging in the illusion of closure, they embrace a different kind of freedom, one that comes from never revisiting what broke them. Their silence isn't cruelty, it's survival. For those left behind, this can feel devastating. They suddenly realize that the person who once gave so much has vanished without return. The calls go unanswered, the messages unread, the apologies unheard, and as regret sets in, the truth becomes clear. The INFJ didn't just walk away from them, they walked toward themselves. That's why INFJs never look back, because their quiet goodbye isn't just an ending. It's a declaration that their peace, growth, and self-respect will always come first, no matter how much it shocks those who underestimated them. When an INFJ finally walks away, it's not an act of cruelty. It's the ultimate act of self-protection. Their silence, their detachment, their refusal to explain isn't about punishing others. It's about reclaiming peace after being stretched too thin for too long. By the time they shut the door, they've already carried more than most people could handle, and that's what makes their goodbye so final. For those left behind, it feels shocking and unfair. They want answers, closure, another chance. But what they don't realize is that the INFJ already gave countless chances in silence. Chances that went unnoticed until it was too late. When they finally choose themselves over the connection, it's permanent. And it's also liberating. This is the quiet power of INFJs, their ability to vanish without noise, without drama, and to build a new life where their energy is protected. That's why people regret underestimating them. So let me ask you, have you ever experienced an INFJ walking away? Or maybe you are the INFJ who had to walk away yourself? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep insights into the INFJ mind.